Lance Meadow with you as we are getting set for Week 8. Columbia goes on the road visiting Harvard in Cambridge. As always, we are joined by head coach Al Bagnoli. And, Coach, I want to start with last Friday night's game. When we spoke after the Dartmouth game, you made the point, amazing that you were still in the thick of things despite some of the hiccups that you came across. And you look at halftime, 2 block punts. It's still, though, a 24-16 game. So what was the difference to you come the fourth quarter where things seemed to get away from you?
Yeah, we have struggled a whole year to put 60 minutes together on all 3 facets. So we had some lapses, some penalties that were procedural in nature, so they weren't physical, hold or anything like that. We got behind the sticks against a pretty talented front 4, so they're able to kind of tee off and disregard the run game. Defensively, we played pretty well, except we gave up too many explosive plays, and we knew going into the game that the quarterback was going to be able to extend plays and really be able to, create opportunities that most quarterbacks can't, and we got burnt on a couple of those plays. So, you have to kind of look at it in total scope. We need to play better for the full 60 minutes. You can't throw for 200 yards in the first half and not come close to that in the second half. We got to stay out of those procedural penalties, the offsides, the motion penalties, and then we've got to just limit some of the explosive plays that are occurring against us because they came in as one of the nation's best rushing teams.
Sure.
And they struggle to consistently run the football, even with the quarterback running it. So, that was the good news coming out of it, but we certainly gave up too many explosive plays in the pass game.
Well, what you're referring to is Yale had 5 pass plays of 30 or more yards, and you have an extremely experienced secondary, and like you said, you've been solid against the run. We haven't seen a lot of those big passing plays. What is the takeaway for your secondary in terms of learning from those experiences?
Well, again, you kind of had to go in there and pick your poison. They were really much more of a ground-orientated, want to run the football behind that offensive line with the backs. We knew they had really dynamic wide receivers, so that didn't surprise us, but you kind of have to pick your poison of, all right, so how many guys are you going to try to put in the box to stop the run game? And to do that, you're going to have to leave your kids out there somewhat exposed, and how well do you think you can hold up? And, we held up reasonably well. He completed less than 50% of his passes, but again, you can't give up that volume of explosive plays, and they came back to haunt us. So it's just when you go into a game, there are a lot of things that you're trying to accomplish and how best to get, to take away what they do the absolute best. And to us, they were averaging over 200 yards a game rushing. So that was the thing we were trying to take away.
It's the game of containment in terms of which facet you can take away. Speaking of explosive plays, you had a big touchdown pass. Kaden Bell hooks up with J.J. Jenkins from 64 yards out. We've talked so much about Bryson Canty this season and some of the other receivers, Coach. I feel we haven't necessarily focused on the rapport that seems to be building between Kaden Bell and J.J. Jenkins. What have you seen out of that, and how valuable has a player like Jenkins been?
Yeah, I mean, he's obviously a talented kid, really good athlete, and he's kind of come into his own. We've been waiting for him to really take that last step. He's finally done some this year, and he still has, honestly, he still could play even better than what he's playing. So he just got to continue to mature. It's nice to be able to balance away from Bryson, so people can't tilt that coverage totally toward him. So we felt we were going to have a pretty dynamic receiving room, and I think we do. It's now just trying to get them consistent, like trying to get our whole offense consistent over 60 minutes and try to stop some of those plays where they either drop ball or, legal formation or offsides. That kind of just kills drives when you're playing against good teams.
Now the challenge this week, you get a Harvard team 3-1. They're coming off a win against Dartmouth. They really test you up front in terms of their defensive line. And I don't need to tell you, but what type of a challenge is that for your offense this week?
Well, again, it's going to be a huge challenge because if they can collapse the pocket and contain the run game with just their down kids, it's going to be hard to throw the football. I mean, now they're playing coverage with 7 guys, and that becomes difficult to throw vertical. It becomes difficult to, to kind of get the production you want in the pass game. So our ability to at least neutralize the down kids and at least create some opportunities in the run game, I think is going to be critical. And then, our ability to change the launch points, move the pocket, and keep those down kids from totally harassing and collapsing the pocket is going to be critical in the pass game.
It seems every week we always talk about the trenches, and you always say, hey, listen, it's always defined in terms of the game. Sure, but
it always is.
I want to flip the script, Coach, because Harvard has the #1 rusher in the Ivy League in Aiden Bourguet, and you've been very solid, as we talked about, against the run, including the performance against Yale. What is it, though, about Bourguet that maybe is a little bit different from the other running backs you've been exposed to this season?
Yeah, I think he's really a complete back. He's not small. He's short, but he's not small. He's he's 200 pounds plus. He's really well weight trained, so he runs through arm tackles. He's got really good vision, catches the ball, so he's a complete player. So he's going to be the most dynamic back that we've seen this entire year, and they've always had a big offensive line with big tight ends. So again, our ability to try to at least contain the run game, will be critical in terms of how the overall game goes. But our kids have played really hard up front, and we've had a little bit of depth, so we're able to replace kids and keep them fresh. And we've been pretty solid against virtually every run game that we've seen so far, and hopefully that continues. But we're going to be challenged for sure.
And lastly, Coach, I want to piggyback off of that point. You just talked about the fight of your team. A number of people are going to look at final scores, which I don't think necessarily tells the whole story. What has encouraged you about the fact that your team is continuing to battle?
Yeah, again, I think it's reflective of the chemistry of, the culture that the team has, and, the commitment that the kids have to each other and to the program to continue fighting. It hasn't gone smoothly from day one, to be honest with you. We've had a whole array of things that we've had to deal with. So it hasn't unfolded perfectly, and it continues to have some challenges to this day. And that's all part of it. And again, I just want to make sure our kids stay positive. They continue to work hard. They continue to compete. They continue to enjoy what they're doing. And, the one-loss record is going to be the one-loss record. But all those things have to stay in place. And if we can do that, then it'll give us the best opportunity to try to win some games down the stretch.
Coach, appreciate the time. Best of luck on Saturday.
Yeah, thank you.
Columbia getting ready to visit Harvard. Kickoff 1 p.m. Eastern. You can watch the game on ESPN Plus and listen on GoColumbiaLions.com.